Today, on what would have been Emmett Till's 82nd birthday, President Joe Biden signed a proclamation designating a national monument to the murdered teenager and his mother. Till was 14 years old in 1955 when he was tortured and murdered in Mississippi over accusations of whistling at a white woman. Till's mother, as the president noted, insisted on an open casket funeral, a decision that helped to galvanize the civil rights movement. The monument includes a bulletproof memorial sign where Till's body was found, installed in 2019 after previous markers were shot up. Unfortunately, in 2023, the president could not simply mark the death of Till and the role it played in sparking the civil rights movement, because today, nearly 70 years later, there's an effort to erase history, to paper over the bad and the truth of our nation.
While darkness and denialism can hide much, they erase nothing. They can hide, but they erase nothing. We can't just choose to learn what we want to know. We have to learn what we should know. We should know about our country. We should know everything, the good, the bad, the truth of who we are as a nation. That's what great nations do. Look, telling the truth and the full history of our nation is important.
We can't just choose to learn what we want to know. We have to learn what we should know. One glaring example of a state that is actively trying to bury what we should know as a part of American history is Florida, where the State Board of Education just approved a new educational curriculum, boosted by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, who awkwardly defends his state's new guidelines while simultaneously pretending he has nothing to do with them.
I didn't do it, and I wasn't involved in it. But I think what they're doing is I think that they're probably going to show some of the folks that eventually parlayed, being a blacksmith into doing things later in life.
Joining me now is Congressman Maxwell Frost, a Florida Democrat. Congressman, there's a lot we could talk about on the politics here and Ron DeSantis, but I do want to start with just what this means, because often this is shorthanded as a political issue and it has real consequences in Florida. So how will the changes in the educational curriculum impact students in the state?
Well, thanks for having me on. It's going to have a big impact on students in the state. But, we're going to be fighting against that with amazing leaders across the entire state that won't stand for this. Not only do they want to erase Black history and American history, they want to change it. And there's a reason why. Last election, 70% of Gen Z voted for Democrats. And so I think Republicans, especially this new neo-fascist movement growing in the country, realizes that young people voting poses an existential threat to the far right-wing Republican Party. And so what they want to do, Jen, is they want to change education so they can change the mindset of a generation. But little do they know, not only is that not going to work, it's just going to piss us off. It's going to drive people to the polls. It's going to drive people to organize, and we won't let it happen in our state.
You sound pretty pissed off, which I appreciate and value. Now, I know you sent a letter. I assume you haven't heard back, but tell me if you have. But what can you actually do to change the curriculum? You're going to get people activated, get Gen Z pissed off. Many are. What can you do to change it?
Yeah, well, we sent many letters in my seven-month tenure as a member of Congress. I've heard back from none of them. All these letters have been to the governor's office or the state cabinet. I've never heard back from them. They have no interest in speaking with us. They have no interest in speaking with the people. The governor never hosts any town halls or wants to speak with constituents. That's why I had to interrupt one of his speeches just about a year and a half ago during my campaign to learn about his plan to help kids stop dying in classrooms. But what can we do? We can organize. We can ensure that we're electing good candidates. We can fight back, send letters, protest to the State Board of Education to say we demand actual education, not a whitewashed version of education that seemingly wants to make our kids okay with slavery and white supremacy. That's a problem. And it's not what the Republican Party was founded on at all. And again, it's this problem we're seeing in the state of Florida, where we have Republican leaders who want to manufacture an issue, then say, I'm the hero here. If you give me more power, I'll deal with it. And we've seen authoritarian leaders do this before. It's in the playbook, and we have to fight against it. So we'll continue to do it. We're going to take it to the school boards. We're going to take it to the state, and we're going to fight for actual education. It's not about a left-wing education or right-wing education. It's about the real history of this country.
Speaking of activism, and you've been very active on a number of issues, you've been very supportive of your Texas colleague, Greg Caesar, in the thirst strike that he took part in today on the Capitol steps. First of all, have you checked in with him? How's he doing?
Yeah, Greg is doing great. I actually saw him at the end of it when we just had votes. And, you know, Greg, you look at someone like Greg, and this is the reason why it's important to send organizers to Congress. Texas has been having a huge problem with workers dying on the job because they don't have access to water. They're not given breaks. And there's really something that the federal government can do here to step in and protect workers. So Greg, today, since the morning, has been on a thirst strike in the hot sun on the Capitol steps to show just a little bit of what the workers are going through in Texas and also across the nation. So I joined him for about an hour because it's a problem everywhere. And this is why we got to elect organizers who are going to, of course, hold our leaders accountable, but as themselves as leaders will show that they're in solidarity with the people. So I'm honored to serve with my brother, Greg Caesar, and he's doing amazing work in Texas and for the country.
I also wanted to ask you about the climate. I know you've been very outspoken on this crisis as well. July is the hottest month on record, I believe, if I'm getting my facts straight there. There's been activism among young people. It's still a partisan issue, though, somehow. How do you change that? And how are you making, how are you building bridges on that front?
You know what's interesting? I actually just had a conversation this morning with Senator Ed Markey about this, and he was talking about the fact that the climate crisis is becoming such a problem to now every sector of society in Massachusetts that he has big business owners, which I think typically folks wouldn't see them as allies in the climate crisis, coming to him and saying, we need to do something about this. It's now hurting my bottom line. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of people just care about. But hey, welcome to the fight nonetheless. And we see the same thing in the state of Florida. As the hurricanes get longer and worse because of the climate crisis, as it is continuing to decimate entire towns and cities in the state of Florida, I think we have a rude awakening upon us. And what I want to tell people is the climate crisis is here. It's happening. We see it happening every day across the country. However, we can still prevent the worst impact of it. And so we have a lot of work to do on it. But I think, Jen, unfortunately, there are consequences coming and that are here, and I think that will shake a lot of people and put people into action. But again, the good news is we still have time.